This is going to be a moment that I take to address something that I'm going to call presence. In particular, I'm going to be referring to like online presence, social media presence, what it means in this day and age. And it's a trend that I've observed for some time. I see in recent years that basically this is something that's been tried. People are trying to figure out how to sort it out when it comes to presence, when it comes to captivating an audience or building their brand or figuring out how to be active online and to appeal to an audience. And it seems like a large volume of the time, a high percentage of the time, there's a really poor estimate when it comes to figuring out how often you should be present online, how often should you drop content, and things like that. I think that in the high percentage, the high majority, a lot of people are getting it wrong. It's just built off of these kind of, it could be from articles, it could be from different sources that seem like they're encouraging people, like if you're more active, that's going to be better. If you try to play toward some kind of statistical factor, like let's say people will be unwinding in the afternoon. You know, if people are working, people are going to school, in the afternoon, you should post content because that's when they're going to be scrolling. Things like this, I've seen those ideas. It's been a long time ideas like that have been floating around. I trace it back to the 2010s. And that might have worked for a time. That might have been accurate. But for the most part, I see it's just creating a lot of saturation with the people themselves. Now, I find that fascinating because I think the root of that disconnect is that there's a delay. This is not live performing. This is not spending time with people or appealing to people in a live setting or face to face in person. And the difference with that is you learn how to form those relationships better in person because you're getting real time feedback with additional information that's needed. So when you're looking out at an audience and they're giving you a certain energy or a certain expression, you know whether you're really engaging or connecting with them or not. Right, an audience, even if they're not saying anything or doing anything, the fact that they're visually present, the fact that you are sharing a similar space with each other, you can kind of feel each other's vibe, that there's a ton of feedback in that. So people online lacking that, they don't understand the organic side of connection that well. And so I think a lot of the creatives, the content creators and people trying to build their brand out there, they're miscalculating how often they should be putting themselves out there. The thing is, people get tired of seeing people, a particular person. People get tired of it, and there's a small pool, there's a small percentage of people that I would basically say are fanatical, or not even to miscategorize them. More specifically, there's a small potential group that won't get tired of seeing that person, that creative or that content creator or online presence. That's a small potential group. That's a small hypothetical group. But when you're appealing to as many people as you want to appeal to or try to appeal to, for the most part, it's more often the case than not that people will get tired of seeing or hearing that person. And what people don't understand, what I see is very largely misunderstood, is that it varies from person to person. So whoever it is who's putting content out there, whoever's trying to have an online presence, to the degree to which they should be active is going to vary according to them and their own capacity for variability. And then things that are kind of out of control, out of their control, such as the impression that they form on other people, such as just that first impression, or, other factors, whether it's their ethnicity or age or these other things that do like subconsciously form some kind of impression and form some kind of interest, right? And that doesn't mean it's negative. It just means it's a part of how people process or digest somebody else's presence. So I would like to see that change, because a lot of people, they put themselves out there more often than not. People err on the side of being too active, and it's almost a lack of empathy to not understand if and when people could just be tired of, or you engaging with them. They could just be tired of whatever you're trying to push or whatever you're trying to put out there. And it's reasonable, because in a real life setting, in person, there's only so many times you can like somebody. It could be around the neighborhood, it could be a job, or it could be the school world. And you can encounter people too often, and you go, well, initially I enjoyed this person, I liked them, their presence was enjoyable, but over time it could just be out of context. Your own mood and your own states of being will vary. So if you're encountering someone who is not adapting to that because they can't get your feedback, they can't know what state or whatever you're in, it can get worrisome. It could get tiresome, where you go, okay, I had enough of seeing this person. I'm seeing them again and again and again, even if it's you're not even interacting with the person. So in real life, I'm sure that's fairly relatable to plenty of people. Sometimes you don't even interact with somebody. Sometimes you don't exchange any words or anything, but the fact that you just saw them again, you like, how many times am I going to see this person? You know what I mean? So that's presence. And with online presence, I would like to see more people who understand when they're oversaturating themselves. They understand how to tailor their activity levels to the impressions that they're forming and their own like presence potential. Because everybody, I think, has a different presence potential, where there's an amount of times you can see someone that will be ideal. There's an amount of times a person can put something out there that's ideal. I've seen people, the one unique thing I've seen is a few people try to really create enough variability with themselves, where one moment you might see them doing acting, the next moment you might see them playing video games online, another moment you might see them dancing. And I've seen people try to create that variability, but even that's not that successful over time, because really, if you treat it more like an organic format, where you're understanding human behavior, when you're understanding your own personal presence potential and how it converts to an online space, I think that's where people get the ideal response. And of course, there are exceptions. See, that's probably what throws plenty of people off. The exceptions would be kind of when it hits a machine process for the person, the content creator, the social media presence, whomever, the person online. When it hits a machine process, either they're working with a company, they're being sponsored, they're getting an additional set of promotions and support from other groups that are like platform-based and company-based collectives. So their approach is going to look very different, because it's going to look like, well, they're putting out content all the time. That seems like the way to go. But I think that at that point, things work the opposite way. So being more active and kind of being in a grind, you'll still continue to see growth, because there are invested entities, there are sponsors, there are things like that that ensure that the growth continues, because they have some kind of skin in the game. They have investments that they're looking after. So having those players involved is going to create an entirely different dynamic than people who don't have that will face. People who don't have that will be subject to the rules of life and human behavior and socialization, which is, there is a limit where there are diminishing returns, where someone is engaging in an online presence so much that they're more or less wearing out their welcome. They're more or less creating a fatigue with the audience, and they're reversing growth rather than promoting growth for themselves.